All right. So good morning, and thanks for having me today. At the beginning of my talk, I want to have you imagine. I want to have you imagine a world where all people get the same level of access and the same level of opportunity on the job market, no matter what their age, gender, sexual orientation, culture, race, or disability. And this may sound obvious or like clear that this is how the world should look like, but it actually does not yet. So in my talk today, I want to create a little bit of a version why diversity matters. And I want to show, based on some case studies, how you can contribute to that with developing Drupal. So the agenda for today is that I want to just give you a brief introduction to what Jobico is and a brief introduction about myself, why diversity in the context of recruiting and web recruiting matters, how we can create inclusion with accessibility. So I will talk a lot about diversity, but also inclusion and accessibility, because I think it's a very important topic. And I will talk about 2 case studies. Depending on the time, I'll definitely talk about 1. And if we have enough time, I will also touch base the 2nd case study. So some background information about myself. My name is Martin Lenz. I have a computer science and business educational background. So I'm in the IT space for almost 20 years now. I actually started as a web developer. I started developing web technologies based on PHP. And I also was a developer with Drupal until 2007. I'm not actively practicing development anymore. So I moved more to the consulting space for 9 years for a large corporate called Accenture. And 3 years ago, I joined the company Jobico, which is a Drupal company, as a CEO, and I'm more focused on the business and strategic matters. I'm also in 2 associations. So I'm in the TA Tech. It's a US organization association for talent acquisition technologies. So quite familiar with what I'm talking about. And I'm also a board member of the Austrian Computer Society. It's an association that basically discusses a lot of the implications that applications and IT has on our daily life. So what is Jobico doing? Jobico is a company that builds job boards, and you may not believe it. There's companies that just focus on building job boards, and we do this for mainly media brands and large organizations globally. So we have 80 customers in more than 18 countries already. And for them, we run roughly about 200 job boards, sometimes generic job boards, but also sometimes quite niche job boards. And as I will show in my examples, also sometimes very dedicatedly for creating more diversity. We also invest a lot in research and development. So over the past 12 months, we invested about €1 million into enhancing our technology, in doing research, even starting research with research partners like the University of Linz, also talking about how can we create a bias-free matching, for example, and a bias-free content on job boards. So some of our customers, maybe you know, it's some really large media brands like the Relics Group or Elsevier, which is the largest science publisher globally. So how do we work? We basically provide a so-called software as a service, and we build our software as a service based on Drupal. So this is what we call a flexible job board platform. And we basically customize this job board platform for all of our customers. We also built our own matching technology. I will talk a little bit less about this today. So the flexible job board platform is built on Drupal, and we benefit a lot from the strong Drupal stack and the flexibility and the modularity that also Drupal provides us. We kind of over the past 10 years, we tried to become more than just a technology provider. And especially when it comes to diversity, we believe that this was quite important because it's a one thing that you build websites and platforms based on the requirements of your customers. But over time, as we fully focused on just this one use case, so we focused fully on building job boards, we also learned a lot about how the recruitment space works. And especially when it came to diversity, we also learned how important this is, like to create an accessible website. And we also try to give this back to our customers. So we try to also give kind of consulting and guidance back to our customers. We have a growing team. So we are now roughly 40 people in a very international environment. So we have our people come from, we're born in 13 different countries, speak 15 different languages. We have various educational backgrounds. We are headquartered in Vienna, but we are quite distributed. So we also have offices in Slovakia, in Czech Republic, in Portugal, and now in Serbia, and also in the United Kingdom. So out of our customer base, there's some of our customers that really clearly focus on diversity, and I will touch base on two of them. The one is on the left side, it's myability.jobs. It's a platform dedicated to people with disabilities, and on the right side there is lgbti-jobs. It's a Swiss platform that dedicates to the community of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersexual community in Switzerland. So if you have questions throughout the process, there is the ability to post questions via the event platform. I cannot see the question screen while I'm presenting, so I will look at the questions at the later stage in the presentation. So please feel free to post the questions, and I will go through the questions later on and try to answer your questions in the end of the presentation. So what is Jobico's vision? And this really highly relates me to the topic that we are talking about now. So we basically want to help people find jobs online. So even that we build marketplaces, some of our customers monetize these marketplaces. So they build job boards where employers can post jobs and candidates find jobs, and they can monetize that. In our mind, it's always the vision of how can we make the technology better so people can find jobs online. So we want to influence how people can make careers, how they can find content. And a lot of this relates to also the level of accessibility that I will talk about today. So if you look at job boards, and this is just a quick introduction on how job boards and recruitment platforms generally work, they have different transactions and different use cases that they solve. So basically, they are called two-sided platforms or two-sided marketplaces. So we try to get together candidates that seek for job opportunity, and on the other hand, we have employers that seek for candidates that search for talent. And the job board plays a more and more important role in the labor market, because it's one of the first entry points for people when they search for jobs. So when we talk about awareness, people want to understand where are job opportunities, and especially if it comes to the diversity space, it's sometimes quite interesting for candidates if there is employers also directly targeting people with specific needs or with specific backgrounds. So it's about creating awareness that there is opportunity, but also creating awareness not only with candidates, but also with employers that there is something like diversity. So it's basically the marketplace takes care not only to create access to the opportunity, but also to help to create opportunity with employers in the way they access and discuss this with employers. And our two examples will show this very specifically for two different diverse target segments. So if you look at the recruitment funnel, it's quite interesting. So some of you may already know something like a sales funnel, and it's quite similar. So it starts on the outreach side, on the left side. So you try to create awareness about a job opportunity. So you can see this like when a candidate really searches for a job, she typically goes through all these different steps. So you kind of get awareness that there is a job opportunity, you consider, you have interest, you read about the job description, you apply for the job, you may get selected, you may get hired, and in the end, you are part of the organization. And quite simplified, there's a lot of touch points throughout this process, and especially the process becomes more and more online. So the web tools that are available in the market are more and more important when it comes to get people connected with employers and find jobs. And there is evidence that there is more than 20 different touch points that someone can have when she's like searching for a job. But I want to highlight 4 very important touch points because it's very common applications that also basically every one of us knows. On the very left side, on creating awareness and consideration, it's the social media and the search, like Google, Facebook, Instagram. So those platforms become more and more important when it comes to create awareness about jobs. But there's also job search platforms like Indeed that drive a lot of engagement, also to job boards, but also directly to employers. Job boards still have a very broad range of use cases that they help to solve as part of the funnel. And this really goes back from awareness up to application, like finding the right jobs, searching for the right jobs, getting job alerts, things like that, and then finally applying. And the reason why this is so important is because the more you are left on the funnel, the more you are the platform that creates access to the labor market. So if you do a bad job at the very beginning of the funnel, and job boards are at the beginning of the funnel, you also lose candidates, or you also block their opportunity on the rest of the funnel. So if you don't create an accessible and easily accessible and bias-free environment on your platform, you basically make it a much harder job for people to really find the right job opportunities and make it fairly balanced for anyone who is in the market. So this is also the driver why we think that diversity and inclusion on job boards matter. So as I said, it's the starting point of the journey in the labor market. So we want to reduce barriers for people to access opportunities. And I will talk a lot about how you can easily create an accessible environment also based on Drupal. We are also very particularly interested in understanding how we can create engagement and create job applications to job offerings. And having an accessible technical environment is the one thing, but it even goes down to the content side, that if job descriptions are written in a biased way, you miss potential talent that basically could apply for the job. So there is a growing amount of evidence that, for example, job descriptions that are written in a more aggressive way or using specific terms, they're basically targeting male candidates more than female candidates. So we also want to learn how we can anticipate that a little bit more and also give more and more feedback about that on our platforms. On the other hand, there's also a growing amount of governmental policy making, especially from the European Union. So there is the Web Directive for Accessible Website Design from the European Union. It has already been launched in 2016. It still mainly targets governmental organizations, but there's a big probability that also for-profit organizations need to comply with these policies. And last but not least, there is a return of investment if you invest into diversity and if you invest into accessibility, because there is more and more research that it also impacts the financial performance of organizations, of companies in a positive way. So there's a nice quote from Lenore McAdam. She says, "Inclusion is at its heart about accessibility." And I will talk a lot about, I will talk a little bit more about accessibility now. So there are some cornerstones for improving diversity and creating an accessible environment that you can facilitate just by implementing the platform in the right way. And it starts with as simple as that, with responsive design. So you make the website easier accessible for all different platforms, for all different devices. Maybe some of you have already heard, but over the past few years, there is a very strong guideline that was growing in the World Wide Web Consortium. It's called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So if you didn't hear about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, definitely take a look at the World Wide Web Consortium website. Google for it. It's definitely one of the key guidelines that you need to rely on when you want to create an accessible website. And just recently, the most recent standard has been published. It's the WCAG 2.1 AA standard, and it's highly recommended that your website relies on that to really create an accessible environment. The European Web Diversity Directive also builds on these web content accessibility guidelines. And the EU also provides some links on relevant tools, how to test if the site is compliant, and also to help you to understand how to make the site more accessible. In the future, as I already mentioned a little bit earlier, it will become more and more important, not just to talk about creating the fair access, so to make it accessible to everybody, but also to look at, is the content that I'm providing, is the service and the transaction that I'm providing, is this still bias free? So as I said, on the job market, very specifically, the way you structure and the way you write your job descriptions have a big impact on who will apply and who will find the job. And also when it comes to matching, some of you may have heard of Amazon using a machine learning algorithm that just based on historic data on what recruiting managers decided in the past to decide on who to hire. And in the end, it turned out that it basically benefited male applicants over female applicants. So looking a little bit more about also how transactions can be made bias free is something that that we are very interested in. So to simplify that, I think that when you create your website and when you create your platform, you can look at two key dimensions to create accessibility and to create a diverse environment. The one side is the technology side. So there is clear guidelines, there is clear technical standards that make your site more accessible than it used to be before. And it starts with responsive web design. It continues with the Web Consortium standards on accessibility. There is still different levels of this accessibility. So there is 3 levels of standards. There is A, AA, and AAA. And in the future, we also see more and more research about bias-free technology. So not just the structure, but also the algorithm need to become bias-free. And on the other dimension, we have what I would call positioning or strategy. So how do you position your platform? And in the space of recruiting, we see generic platforms that basically target kind of all segments, all target audiences. We see job boards that have a partial dedication also to diversity. So some of the job boards sometimes have a campaign around female talent and female careers, for example. And then there is platforms that have a clear diversity dedication. So they're just there for a specific key audience, and typically audiences that are affected that used to have a lack of access to the job market. So the majority of job boards, I would say, is still on the lower left end of this matrix. And because of what we already implemented as part of our work with some specific customers, most of our customers are at least accessible in terms of the accessibility standards that are provided on the web. And the two case studies that I will talk about now are even on the upper end. So they have a clear dedication on diversity, on specific target segments, and they even try to enhance the technical capabilities when it came to create an accessible environment, for example. So, and the European Union is very clear about that, the internet is an essential way to access and provide information and services. And web accessibility allows everyone, no matter what disability or like what cultural background they have, to perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the internet. And remember, web platforms, no matter if you provide content or if you already provide a dedicated transaction like job boards, you are typically at the very beginning of the funnel. So if your site is easily accessible, you also improve the rest of the funnel to make it more inclusive. So the case study that I want to start with is called myability. myability is a social enterprise founded in Vienna in Austria, and is now a company that is focused on helping people with disabilities to find a job in the labor market. The job board is one aspect that they are pursuing. So it's just one of many services that they are providing. Since for a few weeks now, they are the biggest job board in the German-speaking space for people with disabilities. So there were some acquisitions going on also in Germany, and they now run the biggest job board for people with disabilities in the German-speaking space. Also, this company tries to enable employers to create awareness about the specific needs for people with disabilities, and also enable them to make the workplace a more inclusive space. So they really try to focus on the full funnel that I recently mentioned in the very beginning. But we are mainly helping myability with building their job board. So the starting situation for why they did that, and myability already had a job board running on Drupal back in 2017. That still 1 in 6 people in European Union has a disability, like at least a mild level of disability. And especially for people with a more severe level of disability, the rate of poverty is 70% higher than the average. So there is a clear need to make the labor market a more diverse space. And also, if you look at the employment rate of people with disabilities, even in the German-speaking market, it's below 40% for some specific segments. So part of the reason they also moved to our platform was that they still saw the need for creating a more accessible environment. So there was not yet the level of accessibility on the old platform that they wanted to achieve on the technical side. But also they wanted to create more awareness and more interest with employers. So it even goes back down to things like search engine optimization, SEO, to create more reach for candidates, but also for employers to help in the labor market. So how did the solution process work? We worked closely together with a company called Sensations in Austria. They're a Drupal, they're also a Drupal company, but also with a very specific dedication on web accessibility. And this is one of the learnings that I really highly recommend. If you go to the fully accessible level the first time, also consider to get feedback from an expert to help you to avoid some of the pitfalls. So part of the process was really Sensations looked at our platform, and they basically did a review and gave us a clear feedback on what we still need to achieve to become 2.0 AA accessible. And honestly, it was a quite long list. So we had quite some work to, even that the Drupal core was accessible, many of the contributed modules may have not been, and some of our own customizations also have not been accessible. So we had quite some work in front of us to make it fully accessible. The customer, but also liked the way we built our job search. So we leveraged the ability of the Drupal taxonomy manager that we connected with an Apache Solr instance. So basically also we contributed a lot to the search API, and it also helps us a lot to create the right search results when it comes to job boards. And as I said, they also wanted to create more organic reach. So SEO automation was very important to create a better structured search with filters and additional content on the site to increase awareness in the market. So this is just some of the examples, and you can also look it up at myability.jobs. The Web Consortium standards for accessibility mainly gives a baseline and a guideline on the structure of the website. So there is a clear requirement on how the website needs to be structured, so it's easily readable, for example, for screen readers. And you may not believe that, but this was a big eye-opening moment for us when we tried to read our website just with a screen reader. So I highly recommend every one of you just to try it out, to read websites with a screen reader, so you get the perspective of someone who is dependent on a screen reader and how many barriers you have when you start to consume information on the web. So basically, a lot of these Web Consortium standards are about to make the site more structured and to make it easier and understandable for those tools to give you the right information efficiently and also in the right order. On top of that, we built something like a contrast switcher, and this was we built this back with Drupal 7, and this was quite challenging as it also affected all the theming. So we put a lot of effort in there. And the contrast switcher, so there's people that can read the site more easily when there's a different contrast on the website. So if you use the contrast switcher, it's not just about changing the size of the font, but also changing the contrast of the site. So like here, there is people that have a much easier reading experience if the contrast is put like that. And we provided, there is evidence about different levels of contrast that you should have on the site, that you should provide on the site to make it easier readable. So we used the Drupal theming and we used the switcher to change the contrast on the website. Also, what we did is we built a feature that basically enables additional content on search result pages. So it enables the customer to create more awareness with candidates, but also with employers, and to add additional information when it comes to the job search or when you're searching for companies that enable an inclusive environment. So this is very important at the beginning of the process when we create awareness. So we still faced quite some technology challenges when it came to the transformation of the site, especially that we had quite a long list of updates that we needed to make, just because there was yet no awareness about the accessibility topic when we started this process. And also the contrast mode was quite a bit of work, and just try to take the perspective when you test the site. We used to test sites just on our devices, like a mobile, on laptop, on tablet, but we never used the screen reader to test the site. So we finally also needed to test our sites with screen readers, and that was a really big learning, and I really recommend everyone to try this out. Then there was smaller challenges like the built-in what you see is what you get editor that makes it easier to contribute content, but it also creates more requirements around making sure that content that is contributed by users is not disrupting anything that you created in terms of the accessible structures that you built before. So there was a clear number of upsides because why it was easier to do this in Drupal. And Drupal on its core is by default accessible. We also partnered with Sensations, that was a Drupal and accessibility experts. And a very positive thing about this project that we did back in 2018, end of 2017, was not only that we made this one platform fully accessible, we also at the same time could make all of our other customers' websites accessible, because we could roll out the updates to all of our customers. And we could also contribute back to the Drupal community, because many of the updates that we made were based on contributed modules, so like Search API autocomplete or Omega theme, for example. So we could contribute these updates back to the community, so more and more platforms benefit from this accessibility updates. So our front-end developer definitely said that it's not enough just to get familiar with the guidelines. You really need to change your mindset. So it's very important that you change your mindset and that you try to think about the perspective of how can your website be accessed in an easier way. Try to think about the screen reader, things like that. It's not so obvious. So learn and practice to do development with accessibility in mind. So just real quick to finalize the session, there's another case study about a platform in Switzerland. It's basically from a company called the Diversity Job Group. So this job group runs a set of diversity job platforms. So the LGBTI job site is just one of them. They also have Work 50 for people 50 plus, but they also run job sites dedicatedly talking to like female talent and make it easier for female talent with kids to access the market. But they also launched a site about male talent, so male talent with kids, for example, to make it easier to access the market. The specific about the LGBTI example was that there was still there was no clear dedication yet for a job board targeting this segment in Switzerland, and there was for example, especially for transgender, there was still a big gap in awareness also with employers, and I will touch base a little bit more about that. So this is just one example that we implemented for this job site, that candidates can filter for so-called trans-sensitized employers. And that means that those employers are sensitized about the specific needs and backgrounds also of people with transgender people. Just one example, that you call people with not with their birth name, but maybe with a new name. So there's quite some sensibility that you need to create here, and companies could now actively promote that they're trans-sensitized on the job platform. Also something that you typically do not see in the market, and it's still a quite small site, but it's definitely growing. So the topic about LGBTI also in the job market becomes more and more relevant. And it was also one of the sites that was growing the most also during the Corona crisis, for example. All right, so to sum it up, and I will look at the questions just right now, is a very nice quote from Wenna Meyers. It says, "Diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance." And I think this is very important when you consider of how you want to build websites and platforms that target diversity. So the one thing is to position yourself and to create awareness about the specific topic, but you also need to facilitate an easy access to the site. And you also need to do, you can also help both sides of the marketplace to increase the awareness and to improve the transaction of getting a diverse level of applications, for example, to a job. So to sum up, yeah, as I said, it's more than just creating awareness. There are clear and robust guidelines available, so definitely take a look at the Web Consortium standards and the EU directive. I highly recommend also to change the way we approach development. So just try out the screen reader maybe one time with your testing team to test and try it out yourself to test your website. Definitely, Drupal provided a big starting advantage. So for many of our customers that have already been in the diversity space, Drupal was one of the key decision criteria why they wanted to start to work with us. And as I said, every contribution matters. So even if you're just getting started, I think every contribution, every effort counts. I think it's still a long journey to create a fully inclusive web, but every effort counts. And yeah, so thanks a lot for your time. And I will stop sharing my screen now and change to the questions. So please feel free to ask any questions on the live chat or also in the question session. So I don't see any questions yet. So you can use the dashboard and post questions directly on the track. All right, if there were no questions, please just feel free to reach out to me also during the rest of the conference. I hope you enjoy all the other, oh, there is one question coming in. Yes, one question is about, does Jobico contribute back to Drupal? Yes, we do. Some of the contributions that we made were actually based on these accessibility improvements that we did, because we needed to patch some of the contributed modules that we used within our platform, so we contributed them back. Some of them, like one of them was the Sage Search API autocomplete, for example, or for example, the Omega theme. So another question is the plans about Drupal 9. So we already run Drupal 9 websites. So we already have some customers that run the job boards on Drupal 9. And we are trying to more aggressively also embrace the decoupled standard of Drupal over the next few months. So there will be more and more features also available on our decoupled platform. So currently there's 2 of our customers that already run on a prototype on Drupal 9. And there will be more customers to come that build on this decoupled approach. And I think also when it comes to accessibility, it should make things a little bit easier. So my hope is that also when it comes to accessibility, the decoupled approach of Drupal makes it easier for platforms to contribute to that. So there was one more question, if this is a software as a service solution. So SaaS, software as a service. Yes, we provide our software as a service solution, but we still run it as a single tenant solution. So it's a dedicated software as a service approach. So most of our customers run on a single tenant. But it definitely, the way we deploy to all of our sites made it possible that even that we already had 200 sites running, when we made updates on the accessibility level, we could deploy this to all of our customers because of the way our architecture was structured. So there's one last question. There's one last question about how do artificial intelligence and bias play into the work you are doing with recruiting platforms? I think it plays a lot of role. So one of the reasons, and you may remember this first chart, how our platform is structured. So we basically allow the search and match experience and the application experience on our job board platform, but we also build our own matching technology. And more the trend goes to using machine learning, for example, to enhance the the search capabilities and the match capabilities. So definitely, if you think back to the example of Amazon, when you just build on historic data, it's very dangerous that your algorithm is not getting biased, but your data is biased. So if you build on biased data, you will also create biased results. So what our approach is, first of all, having a hybrid approach. So we use a rule-based engine combined with more machine learning capabilities. But we also want to get a better understanding of how bias is created, how bias can be even unintentionally be created on job boards. And it gets back to how do you write your job description? And it's quite hard to influence that, because employers can post their job job postings themselves. So we wanna analyze more and more the wanna get a better understanding what kind of keywords, what kind of like presentation leads to a biased or like a biased application process. So biased in the sense of more male than female, for example, are applying for a job. And we get some of the data out of our analytics, and we're currently working together with a research institute in Linz to also analyze more of this data, because there's a large research project about biased technology. And we are also working to, or try to work together with companies like WittyWorks in Switzerland, that are clearly dedicated to unbiased job descriptions and to help companies to have a more unbiased application process. So I think the awareness within companies that diversity, first of all, is a good thing. It's from a society perspective, it's important, but it also benefits the financial performance. But still, there is a lack of knowledge on what it means to create an unbiased recruiting process. And I think and positively seen, the ecosystem is growing. As I said, companies also like WittyWorks are in Switzerland are contributing to that, to really make it easier for companies to create this more unbiased process. All right, so I think that was it. I get the message that we have two minutes to go. I want to thank everybody for joining. I hope you appreciated the presentation and have got some impulse also for your day-to-day work. And I wish you enjoyable few days at the conference, even if it's just virtually. So enjoy yourself, and I hope to see you soon.